Gonna be super honest with you. This beer got me so lit. And like
Really?
halfway through the podcast, I'm like, what is the alcohol content? And I pick up the beer and it's 12%. I'm like, shit. Oh,
I'm going to put that in the intro then. Spoiler alert, Kevin's lit.
Oh, man. Hello, and welcome to the Interstate Gamers Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, a.k.a. K-Slugs.
My name is Peter, a.k.a. Deal for Real, and I'm also your host.
So, as you know, on this podcast... Whoa, wait, hang on. I needed to set the record straight on something. Apparently, according to some outside sources, from the first episode, I said I was known as Slugs, a.k.a. Slugs. But from then on, apparently every episode I've been saying K-Slugs. So I want to set the record straight. I am K-Slugs. And yeah, I just want to get that off my chest.
Everyone, if you want to take this opportunity to update your contact info in your phone, you can just pause the episode. We'll sit here in silence for like 2 seconds, and you can just pause the episode, update Kevin's contact info, because we know that you got to do that.
Right, right.
You have to set your own record straight, everyone.
Right.
So here's 2 seconds of silence.
Yeah, so...
And we're back.
I just didn't want people, to think that, the first episode was one dude, and then he got canned, and then now here's this guy named K-Slugs, this novice, and everybody's going to be like, I miss the original Slugs, So...
Yeah. Anyway, enough about that. The Interstate Gamers is a podcast where we discuss and critique some video games that we've played a lot in our day, or sometimes games that we haven't played so much. Kevin played Zero Mission, the Metroid game, for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I'll be playing a game for the first time as well for an upcoming episode. Keep your eyes peeled on that. And Kevin and I love video games. And if you've heard any episodes before this one, you probably know that already. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, we like to do a little thing where we talk about a different kind of starch, not potatoes, but grain, wheat, to be specific, I believe.
Wheatens.
And we like to talk about beer. So, Kevin, what are you drinking today?
Okay, so cool story about this beer. Maybe not like a super cool story, like our first episode.
Oh, the bar was so high on that one.
I know. I don't think we can have another beer story as good as that one. But I will say I went and I set out to get the beer that was featured on the Yeasty Boys podcast, known as the Dogfish 120-minute IPA. I believe that was the one they featured on their most recent episode. If you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. Our good friends at the Yeasty Boys. But instead, there wasn't the 120-minute IPA, but this one right next to the 90-minute IPA, which is what I almost got, was this Dogfish Head Palo Santo Marron. It's a wood-aged brown ale, and it is aged in handmade Palo Santo tanks. So I was like, oh, I got to get me some barrel-aged beer, basically, because I love my barrel-aged beer. So I went and got this beer, and spoilers, it tastes amazing. So I am good and ready to go for this podcast.
I was honestly expecting you to say, spoiler alert, it's shit. And I was like, oh no.
No, definitely not.
All right, good. Well, I'm relieved personally. I'm drinking a beer that I'm having for the first time today. Let me grab that bottle real quick. It is a beer from Barcelona. It's a lager. But I believe the name of the brewery is Daura, or Daura, spelled D-A-U-R-A. And the name of the beer is, get ready for it, Damn, spelled D-A-M-M, 2 M's.
That's perfect.
And this is a Barcelonan beer, apparently. I found it mysteriously on my doorstep, so I just decided to bring it in. And it's really good. And I have my own beer story, but it's not actually related to this one. It's related to a beer I was drinking yesterday, or a beer that I kind of failed to drink. I was at a friend's apartment for our weekly game night, where myself and a bunch of other people gather and play board games and drink beer and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I brought my own beer. I brought the Claymore Scottish Ale, which I think I drank like 2 episodes ago, maybe. And I set it on the kitchen countertop. And I also set my my dinner on the countertop because I got a little sandwich from somewhere and brought it over, brought it to go. And as I'm fiddling with my sandwich, I knock over the beer after I've already opened it, and 2/3 of it spills all over the linoleum.
No.
And I was like, ah, shit. So, me really disliking messes, especially the ones that I've made, I got just a whole mess of paper towels, spent probably like 10 minutes cleaning up that beer as thoroughly as I could. I like wiped down the floor with water afterwards and dried it and did all this stuff. And, the good thing is that the others were setting up the board game that we were going to play while I was doing all this. And then at one point they're like, Peter, you okay over there, man? And I was like, yeah, just trying not to be a terrible house guest. Like trying to...
but did not succeed.
Because it got all over it. It got it splashed a little bit onto like the bottom of the refrigerator and the dishwasher and all this nonsense. I was like, oh, Lord. But I don't believe I did any lasting damage. I think I handled it with aplomb. And yeah, so that's the time that I got to drink 1/3 of a beer.
Yeah, I get a text last night at I don't even know how late. I was already in bed, and I wake up this morning, and I get a text from Peter that says, when you spill the claymore... no, I got a double text from me that said, when you spill the claymore at a friend's house. I was just like, what?
Well, let me explain that. So this happened pretty early in the evening. It happened at 7-ish, but I didn't text you about it until after I'd gotten home.
Oh.
And so I texted you, and then you said, what? And I thought that it was pretty self-explanatory, to be honest, so I just sent the same text again.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I did it. It wasn't an accidental double text or anything. It was
that actually makes the double text that much better.
It was me being a smartass is what it was.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, shall we talk about this week's game?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll give it a little bit of introduction. This is a game that is a world-renowned classic, I would say, and I think that few, if any, would disagree with that. It's a game that's defined or refined a genre. It's a game that has a strong legacy that lives on today, and this game, for the Super Nintendo, is Super Mario World.
Wahoo! Insert sound clip here.
So Super Mario World. This is a big bad game. Not big bad as in it's a gigantic game, but big bad in that it's got a strong legacy, which I'd like to talk a little bit about actually before we get into the meat and potatoes. So Super Mario World was released in 1991. It was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, and it was also bundled with the Super Nintendo. So between those factors, it ended up being the best-selling Super Nintendo game by a huge margin. It sold 20 million copies, including the bundles. I believe the second place game in terms of sales for that console was Donkey Kong Country, which is another great game, but that one only sold 9 million. And compare that to the 20 million of this game, that just blows out the water.
Holy cow,
that's a lot of games.
Yeah.
The game was remade for the Game Boy Advance in 2002, which is something that I'll talk a little bit about because that's the version of the game that I currently have in my possession. It was part of the Super Mario Advance series where Nintendo basically remade or ported rather some games over to the Game Boy Advance. But the reason I mentioned the legacy of this game is that it's a game that still has a huge presence in gaming in general today, I would say. It has a really strong speedrunning community. It was included as a skin, I suppose, in Super Mario Maker, which is a wildly popular Wii U game.
Love that game.
Yeah, it's a game that I really want to play, honestly. But because the aesthetics and assets from that game were included in Mario Maker, it's reached a whole new set of people probably. And in addition to that, there's also an incredibly vast, I don't know if that's the right word, an incredibly strong ROM hacking community for this game, one that I was sort of on the fringe of back when I was in middle school, 10 years ago. And there are some very famous ROM hacks that exist to this day that are featured on AGDQ and SGDQ and all that stuff. So,
wow.
This game's going to be 30 years old in 3 years here, which boggles my mind, but it's still going strong. It's a really awesome game, I think. And I grew up with it. I still own it in some way on the Game Boy Advance, as I said. But I've been talking a lot. Kevin, I want to hear what you think about just in general about this game, like what your experience was with it, if you grew up with it, or kind of what that situation is.
Well, I actually don't have a ton of experience with the game. Obviously, I've played Mario and different Mario games, but I never could decipher which was which, and for a long time. I want to say I've played this one on my aunt used to have a Super Nintendo, and I would go over there and play it. I think I played this one at her house, and I remember it was a very challenging game, at least when I was a young kid. And coming back and playing it with my girlfriend Katie, it was pretty fun. It's actually still very challenging, honestly. It's not easy, at least compared to... I'll be doing a lot of comparisons from this one to Super Mario Bros., the original, as that is one Katie and I have played extensively. And so you'll see a lot of comparisons there, but I did do a lot of research on the differences between them, so I don't get ahead of, or speak ahead of myself there. But yeah, I don't have like a super amazing history with this game, but I do know its importance in history, and I do know what all it brought to the table. And I think everyone's in a treat if they either revisit this game or play it for the first time, because maybe somehow they didn't play it after, how many sales did it have?
20 mil. 20
million. I don't know how you missed out on that, but if you did, we're here for you.
Here at the Interstate Gamers Support Group, we provide a caring atmosphere for people who have not played amazing games.
Yes.
So it sounds to me a little bit like this is sort of a similar situation that you had in our last episode with Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion, where you had played a very similar game, or games that are pretty similar, but they do have their differences. And so even if you don't have a whole lot of experience with the game we're reviewing on the show, you have strong reference points.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully next episode will be the one that is a game that I've played for more or less the first time. I need to get on that after we're done recording this. So that way you don't have to be the one doing all the new stuff.
Oh man, but I can't say that I hate it though. I've still had a lot of fun playing all these different video games, and I just got a Switch also, so that's been like I've been playing tons of new video games, and I'm just having the time of my life over here. Yeah,
and you've been joining our friend Chris on streams as well.
And, yes,
you and I and Chris have all been playing our own little Pokemon Nuzlocks. So yeah, we've been doing a fair amount of gaming lately. It's been pretty good.
Yeah. Well, let's delve right into it, man. I'm excited to get started on this. Super Mario World and its gameplay. What do you got for me? Go.
Well, I got a lot, but I'm going to start off in the general sense, and we can start narrowing it down from there, get into the nitty gritty. So this is the Mario game that I've played the most by far out of any of them. So I'm not going to be referring to other games as like a huge reference point, but one thing that I can talk about is the immediate predecessor to this game, which was Super Mario Bros. 3 for the Nintendo. And that game, I would say, is kind of up there with this game in terms of legacy and like all-time greatest Mario games. People really love Super Mario Bros. 3. And for good reason, it's a great game. But I kind of want to preface the gameplay section by saying that this game, Super Mario World, didn't really introduce so much new stuff in terms of gameplay. Rather, I think it refined mechanics and ideas that Super Mario Bros. 3 brought to the table a few years earlier for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. Like, maybe it wasn't super revolutionary, this game was, but it was a refinement, and I think that's part of what makes it so great, in my opinion.
If I may interject,
yeah, go for it.
I actually have something on the contrary to that point that you just mentioned.
Oh.
So I actually think this game was very innovative because this is Yoshi's first game, man. This is like Yoshi's first appearance.
Well, yeah, but Yoshi's like a dumb dinosaur, and like
a dumb dinosaur.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't kill me. No, that's actually that's my very next bullet point. So I'm glad that you brought it up. So yeah, go ahead and tell me about Yoshi.
Well, Yoshi. Everybody. If you don't know Yoshi, he's a green dinosaur that I would say he's one of Mario's sidekicks. But it was recently confirmed that in this game, when Mario is riding on Yoshi, Yoshi is like a dinosaur that you get to ride, and he kind of eats I say eats, he sticks his tongue out, and these villains get attached to his tongue, and he sucks them back in. I mean, most people know.
I would call that eating, yes.
But he spits them back out. So I don't know if, for our fact checkers out there, I don't know if eating is the same act. Like if you have to swallow for something to be considered eating. But
is haptic feedback the proper term?
Yeah, I think that is the proper term.
I think that's the proper term.
So with Yoshi's haptic feedback, he eats a villain and he spits him back out, and you can use it as a projectile, I believe. He can also run. You can run around and jump on him, and he can take a hit. That's for sure. The only thing he really doesn't die to, or the only way he can really die, and I say die, I use that term loosely because you can just get him again, is if he falls down in a hole, which can happen. Mario is known to have a lot of holes, but yeah. So that's Yoshi's first appearance in here, and or in Nintendo, and he gets his own games after that, and he's in a lot of other Nintendo titles like Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros. And so if you're not familiar with Yoshi, you really need to be. But I'm sure most people know who Yoshi is, and I'm just like, everybody's just like, yeah, we know. But that's Yoshi's first game. Not only that, but this game is the first game to debut item storage, man. This... I believe. You sure?
Well, because Super Mario Brothers 3, it was different. It was a different type of storage. But in Super Mario Brothers 3, you could collect items in a little inventory, and then I believe when you were on the overworld, you could choose an item to start the next level with. But I don't think it worked the same way like in this game where the item is on screen, it can fall down to you. It wasn't that. So
okay.
So it is different to your point, but it's not like a 100 million% new.
Right. Yeah, no, item storage, basically you can use this, you can get an item and use it in game. I guess that's what I mean, is that was the first time for it to debut. But I guess, it's building off the previous game, like you had said. So I could see how it kind of builds on that. But I still stick with the Yoshi thing. And not only that, it doesn't, I haven't played Super Mario Bros. 3 too much to know too much about the game, but I want to say Super Mario World introduced a lot of different villains, such as, I don't know if he's in 3, so don't crucify me, but
yes, Bowser is in 3.
No, the football player enemy.
Oh yeah, I think those are new to this game.
Yeah, no, I like that. I love that dude. Although they're very hard and challenging to overcome and conquer, but I loved that. I don't know why, I just did.
Yeah, they're great.
Also, spin jump kind of debuted its way into this game.
Yeah, and spin jumping, for people who might not know, is rather than normal jumping, when you spin jump, you can destroy certain types of blocks, and you can also you can stomp on enemies that would normally damage you if you jumped on them regular, like enemies that have spikes on their back, for example. You can spin jump on them and not be hurt. You just bounce off them. So it's a really useful way to navigate. It's I imagine it's something that's used a lot in speedruns, but I haven't watched too many speedruns, so I don't actually know. Talking on my ass here a little bit. But yes, spin jumping definitely important. And I think it was introduced in this game for sure. Fact checkers, let us know.
So as you can see, there was quite a bit of innovation that came with this game, and it being so popular. So that was one of my biggest points on gameplay, was that it kind of tried to introduce some new techniques, some new characters more than anything, into the game, and make the game a little more diverse and have a little bit more variety that kind of built upon what they already had in place. So I think it was just this perfect upgrade of Super Mario Bros. 3, where it was just like a major enhancement in every good way.
I would say so, yeah. And that kind of segues nicely into something I wanted to talk about. You mentioned this game having a little more variety in some ways than the previous. And one place where I think that really shines is on the overworld. In Super Mario Brothers 3, every region does have its own little overworld, but they're not really interconnected, I don't think. I think basically each one has like an entrance and an exit to where you travel between them. But in this game, it's one huge overworld with little sub overworlds that are, part of the environment. For example, one of them is Vanilla Caverns, Vanilla something or other. It's the cave section, and you can enter that section of the overworld map via an entrance on like the main overworld. So it's kind of a little built-in area. They have the Forest of Illusion, which is its own little secluded area. They have the Valley of Bowser, which is like hidden underwater basically, and it's this crazy cave area with all these hard levels. But it really does feel like you're part of a bigger world, true to the name of the game, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to traverse, and you get treated to a lot of fun little scenery and animations while you're out in the overworld. And it makes it just kind of fun to hang out there, not like you're going to sit there for minutes exploring. It's not really that kind of game, but it's a really cool thing to do in between levels.
Yeah. And I feel like that's obviously, given the name, that's one of the points that the developers wanted to drive home and kind of resonate with people who play the game. Hey, this is Mario's freaking world. Like this is what Mario lives in. This yeah.
Actually, on that same topic, there was one thing between Super Mario Brothers 3 and this game that I think some people might call like a downgrade or backtracking a little bit, and that is that in Super Mario Brothers 3 on the overworld there were some places like shops, for example, where you could go and buy items, which kind of goes back to our item storage point from earlier. And there are also things kind of like random encounters, but not totally random. Sometimes a Hammer Bros, or a Hammer Bro, would spawn somewhere on the map, and if your path intersected with theirs, then you'd have to fight them, and like a little mini game sort of thing. And those two types of things, like stores, the idea of stores and also the idea of like overworld encounters, those don't occur in this game. So I could see some people not really liking that fact. But for me personally, it doesn't really detract from it. In fact, I kind of prefer the more streamlined experience where like all you have are levels and that's it, really. It's very simple. And yeah, that's kind of the end of that train of thought.
I wonder what the developers like thought process behind that was, because I guarantee you they probably considered it.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they probably wanted to make it feel just more like, hey, you're in Mario's world, man. Like this is, they wanted to put a lot of emphasis and focus on the world that you're in. And yeah, I guess they felt like including random encounters on there might have been, would detract too much from Mario's world. I don't know. That's my guess, but I don't know.
I think that would make sense. Have you played a significant amount of the new Super Mario Brothers games, like on the Wii or the DS or stuff like that?
Yes. Katie and I purchased New Super Mario Bros. 2. And Katie has pretty much gone to town on that game and beaten it. Yeah, we've played a lot of that game, and that game is super fun as well.
Yeah. The reason I bring it up is because I think those games have a more SMB3 style to the overworlds, where they do have shops and they do have encounters and things.
Yes.
And the worlds are not really like all interconnected so much as it's, world 1, then world 2, then world 3.
Yeah, they each feel like their own subsections, I should say. So you'll have like an ice world, or you'll have like a fire world, or like just a normal one or a ghost one. Like, yeah, it's not as like streamlined as Super Mario World in itself, where it's just you feel like you're in one big world and they all interconnect to each other. So that is one unique thing that Super Mario World did bring to the table, and I think is a fantastic element to this game.
Yeah. I'm curious if you have any opinions on the items in this game.
Okay, Cape Mario may be one that I have. I thought Cape Mario was a little awkward. He's kind of hard to use. But I'm also comparing this to Tanuki Mario from the new Super Mario Bros. 2 games. Or you can use Tanuki Mario in there, but I don't think Tanuki Mario debuted in that game. But that is the first time I used Tanuki Mario. And Tanuki Mario, which is hard to say. I feel is much easier to use than Cape Mario. Cape Mario, you just feel like you're going all over the place. But it is a neat feature, and that one, I don't know. What do you think?
I actually agree with you. I've played this game enough to where I've gotten the hang of the cape pretty well. So although I don't have trouble using it, but I definitely did for a very long time. Like it took me a long time to get the timing down on everything. But the angle I'm kind of coming from is that I think that the cape is too strong, personally. I I find that it makes it really easy to like skip through huge sections of levels, if not entire levels. And I, it's there are ways to prevent people from doing that. Like you can put obstacles in the sky that make it, you know, difficult or impossible to fly through like that. But I don't think as a game designer I would want to have to do that. Like I wouldn't want to throw obstacles in the air for the sake of impeding a flying Mario. You know, that's kind of like ugly and kind of a not really an elegant solution to something. Um, one of the reasons I think that Tanuki Mario is a little bit better is that rather than flying through the whole level and like going for as long as you want, I believe you just ascend up to a certain height and then you descend, right? Like you can't keep flying forever. You have to come down eventually.
Yeah. You reach like an apex. So if you run say an opposite direction and then you come back and you run as fast as you can, as long as you have a straight line, like run, and you reach a certain point where you can't run anymore or run any faster, I should say. I don't know if it's any faster, but you build up this meter, and then when you jump, that's when you can fly. And so then you'll begin your ascent, and you kind of can reach this apex where you can't go any higher. But that is really high. Like you could ideally reach the ceiling pretty easily. But when you come back down, you can slow your descent. Yes.
Yeah, but the general gist of what I'm saying is that with the Tanuki, you have to go up and then come down. Whereas with the cape, you can keep flying horizontally, and actually you can gain height as well, forever until you end the level or until something gets in your way.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I thought
you can go through the entire level like that.
Interesting. I had a lot of trouble with it. I couldn't figure out the mechanic, but maybe, with a little time I could master it. I think it would be pretty cool to figure out how that worked. Go back and figure out how that worked. But yeah, no, interesting comparison between Cape Mario and Tanuki Mario.
Yeah, because otherwise they're pretty similar. Like you can use both of them to attack enemies and things like that. The infinite flying thing is really the only big meaningful distinction, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, just something I wanted to throw out there. See if you had any thoughts on that.
Can I talk about one thing that I just didn't like?
Go for it.
Okay, what's up with the freaking slopes, and why do I have to slip down them? I don't like that. I just want to stay on the slope. It's not that hard to stay on a slope, Mario. Come on, man.
Oh, are you saying like when you're standing on a slope, you can't just stand there, like it forces you to kind of slide down a little bit?
Yeah, that's kind of annoying, man.
I guess that's true. Shit, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Does that? I don't know this, but is that in any other Mario games?
Not
ones that I've played for sure.
I mean, it might be in SMB3, but I haven't played that game in a long time, so I can't say if that's like a holdover or not.
Regardless, terrible mechanic in my opinion. But I had when I first found that out, I was like, oh, are you serious? Because, like obviously I died is something that I thought I could just stand on the slope and figure something out. But it's kind of annoying because you just have to stay where you want to stay. And there are issues with that because it's like, okay, I need to be in this location, but it's trying to freaking slip me down and hit me. So I don't know. I found that a little bit annoying. In terms of gameplay, those were one of the things that I didn't like.
Yeah, I don't usually find myself having to stand in one spot for any amount of time on a slope, but maybe that's like differences in play styles. And I think that if the game has a mechanic that's preventing you from doing the play style you want, that's probably not a good thing.
Right.
So I certainly see where you're coming from.
Another thing I thought was weird. Saving I thought was pretty odd how that worked. I couldn't find a very set way in how it saved the game. Maybe you know this. How does the game work in terms of saving?
You are prompted to save after you do any of the following, unless I'm mistaken. One is if you complete a Switch Palace, which there are only 4 of, and you can only do those once, so that's not really significant. Two is if you beat a Ghost House, then it prompts you to save. And then if you beat a Fortress or a Castle, it also prompts you to save.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay, because Katie and I were like, okay, I don't know why we saved here when we were in the ghost level. And we were like, I have no idea why we just saved, but we did. So that was something I thought was rather odd. But I do feel like not only does the odd, but like rare saving of the game make it more challenging. Well, actually, that's my only point. It does make it more challenging, but at the same time, it's kind of like when am I going to save? You know, like I guess if me going into it not really knowing when, and Katie started playing it first, so she may have been introduced to that better. But when I picked it up from where she was and I started playing, I saved at a random ghost level, and I didn't know why. But now that you've informed me, I know why. But yeah, I thought the saving was a little odd. It would be cool to save it at any point, which, we had a 3DS, so I can save it. I can create save states, which we did use because we needed to beat it in a timely manner. But saving the game naturally does make it a little bit harder and more challenging. So for any gamers out there who are looking for a challenge, Super Mario World is your game.
Yeah. The save point is really interesting, and actually that segues really nicely into my little section that I want to do, where I want to briefly compare the Super Nintendo version to the Game Boy Advance version, because there are some pretty significant differences. But before I do that, I want to say really quickly, I'm not sure I emphasize this enough, but this is like my favorite Mario game.
Okay.
Let the record show. But the main reason for that actually is because of the physics in this game. This is something I've said probably 3 times on the podcast already, but I prefer platforming games that aren't very floaty. And I think most Mario games are floaty to an extent, except for this one. In this one, you jump and you fall.
Yeah.
And in this one, you run and you don't keep your momentum like forever when you stop running. You stop pretty quickly. And it just feels way more responsive to me than any other Mario game I've played, including some new ones. I haven't played like every single Mario game ever, but I've played like 1, 2, 3, this one, a couple of the new Super Mario Brothers games. And to me, this game just feels the best. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to play it to this day. It's because it feels good.
Yeah. To your point, I actually read, I came across in a review of this game. It was a user review. And this person had said that this game is the most fair video game because if you die, it's your fault. That's what he says. He says, if you die, it's your fault. You could have done something to prevent it. Like, it is the most true and pure game in terms of gameplay and fair, which means it is going to be challenging. So that kind of, and when you tell me that, I kind of go back to that review and I could see that thought process there. That's like, okay, this is a very fair and true game in terms of gameplay.
I find that statement about it being the most fair game, I find that pretty hard to like quantify. And I don't know if I would call this the most fair game ever, but I generally agree with that. I feel like there's not all that much bullshit in this game. Then again, I've been playing it for years, so maybe I've gotten used to any bullshit that's in the game. So fact checkers, let us know. Is there bullshit in SMW, yes or no?
And I think that's meant to say that there's not a lot of gimmicks that you don't already know about. Like, there's not a lot of things in the game that's like, okay, I just died because of, like you said, bullshit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the point he was trying to drive home. And this may be his favorite game in the entire world because this user gave it a 10 out of 10. So, yeah. But I did like that point that he had mentioned, it being a pretty fair game at the very least. And I can really see that. And I do like the fact that, he's not as floaty. Although sometimes I kind of like the original Super Mario Bros. Floatiness a little bit. I don't know. I kind of like how you can kind of float over a little bit. It seems a little less realistic, but yeah.
Well, I only like to play the most realistic video games possible.
Right.
Like Star Fox 64.
Oh, right, yeah. Metal legs are the way to go.
Talking animals in space. Do you have more gameplay points you want to make before I do my Game Boy Advance comparison?
No, actually, I think I've hit pretty much all my gameplay points. So go right ahead.
All right, I'm going to try to do this quickly because we've been talking about gameplay for a long time. So Game Boy Advance version. Probably the biggest change is that they added the ability to play as Luigi at any time. In the Super Nintendo version, you can only play as Luigi when you're playing a two-player game. The second player will control Luigi. But it's literally just a palette swap of Mario. Like, same body shape and head shape and everything. It's really weird. In the Game Boy Advance version, you can play as Luigi in single-player mode whenever you want. They both travel around the map together.
Right.
And Luigi looks different because, spoiler alert, he's a different person. And he jumps and kind of does his little flutter kick like he does in Super Mario Brothers 2 and in more recent Mario games. Like, they usually have him doing the flutter kick pretty faithfully. So he controls differently. He's very much more floaty, or he's much more floaty than Mario is. And you have to play pretty differently to play as him. And that's a really great way to add some variety if you want. Personally, I prefer regular Mario, but Luigi's cool too. And I enjoyed playing as him for a long time.
Katie loves Luigi. She wanted to buy these beer glasses the other day when we were at GameStop. Mario and Luigi. I said, well, which one would you drink out of? And she said, oh, Luigi, definitely. I was like, oh, okay. Makes sense.
I love Luigi. Luigi's great. So that's probably the biggest difference. Another really big one, but a little more subtle, I guess, is that what's the best way to phrase this? So you talked about the item storage earlier. And the way that it works in Super Mario World is that whenever you get hit, assuming you're not like the most basic Mario, if you have a power-up of any kind, whenever you get hit, you go back down to small Mario. Mm-hmm. Now in the Game Boy Advance version, if you're just Super Mario, so you have the mushroom but nothing else, you get hit, you go back to small Mario. But if you have the Fire Flower or the Cape, you go to regular Mario, or Super Mario, the big one, and then you can get hit again and then go to small Mario. So they basically give you an extra hit in some situations in the Game Boy Advance version, which makes it a lot easier.
Okay, yes. This is a point I was trying to confirm with, I think Chris, maybe? Our fellow boy Z-Link. I can't remember. Maybe it's on stream when we were streaming on Twitch. But I was observing that, and I was like, okay, I go immediately, no matter what state I'm in, to small Mario. And I was like, I'm pretty sure in other Mario games that I've played, I've gone to Super Mario, and then, like, if I had a Fire Flower or something like that, I would then go to Super Mario, and then if I got hit again, go to small Mario. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I wasn't sure why or how or when that actually occurs. So that's cool.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop because I played the Game Boy Advance version after a long time of not playing the original. And then I went back to the original and I was like, oh, am I going crazy or is there a difference? And then I, did it side by side. I was like, oh, there is this pretty significant difference.
Yeah.
So another thing that makes this game easier actually too, on the Game Boy Advance version, is that whenever you save in the Game Boy Advance version, your lives, your power-ups, and your score are all saved whenever you exit. So you come back and you have 13 lives and you have the Fire Flower or whatever it is. So of course, when I 100%ed the game, my very last act as Peter in Super Mario World was to get myself the cape with the Fire Flower in reserve. And then I got myself a Yoshi. And then I went and I got 999 lives because there's a place where you can farm really quickly. You can get like 14 lives in a few seconds. And I did that over and over and over again until I got 999. And then I went to a place on the map and saved and quit. And so I have like my beautiful little immaculate save file with everything maxed out and all that stuff. Can't do that on the Super Nintendo version.
How many lives can you get?
999.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. I don't know how many you can get in the Super Nintendo version. The last thing is that in the Game Boy Advance version, you can save anywhere at any time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's interesting because we're playing it on the 3DS, and I guess we're playing the Super Nintendo version on the 3DS because we can't save it anytime. So, yeah, I think that about does it for gameplay.
Yeah, I think we've covered all the bases.
So what? Let's just go straight to our ratings for gameplay then. What you got for gameplay?
Gave it a hot, fresh, low calorie, yet somehow chocolate filled 5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. Somehow I knew. That low calorie threw me for a loop, but somehow I knew. Well, I gave, on my rating scale, I gave it a 90. So pretty good for me.
Yeah, I would say so.
Cool. Well, let's move right on to aesthetics, man. Aesthetics. So I will start off by saying, and we'll just go straight into visuals. Compared to Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, these visuals are amazing. They switched to the rounded textures versus kind of the square blocky ones, and then they kind of upgraded the the colors of the game, so they're more bright and vibrant. I don't really remember what consoles Mario Bros. 1, 2, or 3 is on, so I'm not sure if that has to do with the SNES technology versus the NES.
Yep, that totally does.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because you can instantly tell with World versus Super Mario Bros. 3. Like, it is an amazing upgrade. And it looks so fresh and so clean. It took me a little bit to get used to the different kind of style than the original Super Mario Bros. And I've kind of played the new Super Mario Bros. 2. So between those two styles, I had to kind of get into this one because it's more unique than all the other Super Mario Bros. Out there in terms of its style. But it's definitely really bright and vibrant compared to the earlier ones in the series. And I think it's really amazing. So especially when they finally got rounded textures in there. So kudos to them on that.
Yeah, I love the visual style of this game in general. It's definitely extremely colorful, very cartoony. Not that Mario games are ever realistic, really, except for maybe like parts of Odyssey. But I think that one thing that's really strong about this game from the visual standpoint is how, I don't know what the best way to phrase this is. I feel like I say that a lot on this podcast. The game is very easy to read. And by that, I mean that everything's very distinct from each other. There's nothing really ambiguous that I can think of, at least. And this is, it doesn't sound like a huge deal, like, oh, a game where you can tell what everything is. Like, shouldn't that be standard? And yeah, it should be. But there are some games that have visual styles that make things a little bit ambiguous. And the example that I'm thinking of right now is Donkey Kong Country. Because in Donkey Kong Country, you have a level that's basically drawn over like collision surfaces. So in that game, there are some parts where like a ledge maybe ends a little sooner than you think because the artwork and the collision box aren't like totally one-to-one. In this game, that never happens. In this game, like the edge of something is the edge of something. And like it's extremely clear. And it makes it easier to do some of the trickier platforming, I think. And again, I don't think this is unique to Mario games. And it's not unique to this Mario game, but it's just something that I think we should think about because there are some games where it's not the case.
Right. Especially during that time.
Yeah.
Like you had to go out of your way to make that happen, I assume. Old Man Plumber seems to be looking good, dude.
He ages pretty well.
Yeah, he really does, doesn't he?
Doesn't look a day over 32. I think that's how many years since Super Mario Brothers came out.
He seems to be getting younger and slimmer every time, so kudos.
It's all the tennis he plays. Another thing is that I love the backgrounds of the levels in this game. They're super geometric. They have a lot of like interesting shapes and patterns that emerge from the background. They're very colorful, just like the rest of the game. And this isn't a big deal, really. It's just that it's something that I really personally enjoy. I think I just love the geometric nature of the backgrounds. What's interesting is that when you ROM hack this game, you see that there are certain palettes for levels that were never used in any of the final levels. Like there will be foreground and background colors that look really nice that someone designed, but they just never appear in the final game. And it seems kind of like a waste, actually. Like there were some really cool colors. Like you had some that had bright green foregrounds and like dark purple backgrounds and looks super cool and weird and like, oh man, I wish that this was in the original. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, just a little Peter rant there. I love the backgrounds in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think another thing to consider is like, think of the time frame, right, of these Mario games, and think, okay, you've gone through, let's say you're a big Mario fan at this day and age when Super Mario World comes out. You've played Super Mario Bros. You've played Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3, and everybody's like hype on Super Mario Bros. Then Super Mario Bros. World comes out, and you're like, oh my God, this game looks amazing. Like, in comparison to those other games of Super Mario Bros., it takes it out of the park on this one. So I think the visuals are amazing.
I think they are too. It sounds like you kind of reached the end of your segment there. Is that right?
Yeah, no, actually, that's all I really have to say. I can't, there's nothing I can even complain about. So
That's good. I have two little things I want to say before I finish my visuals section.
yeah, go ahead, man.
So one, this is another Game Boy Advance difference, but in the Game Boy Advance version, they add a little black gradient at the very bottom of the level, where the background is, to indicate that beyond that point you die. Like that's the void. Does that make sense? Like and where the bottomless pits are, they have a little slight gradient that shows like that this is the pit.
Oh, I never noticed that.
Yeah, well, that's because you're playing the Super Nintendo version, and the Super Nintendo version doesn't have that.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Which, I mean, it's usually not a problem, but there are some instances where maybe you're not sure where the bottom of the level is, so you're not sure if you're jumping off of like a, of like a bottomless pit, or if there's land below you, or whatever. So that little touch in the Game Boy Advance version makes it kind of nice.
Yeah.
Just a little like quality of life thing. But one thing that's pretty significant, and I don't know if you got to this point in the game, but if you complete the special world, which is the last like hidden world in this game, then you unlock alternate sprites and alternate color palettes for some of the characters in some of the overworld. Did you see that?
I did not. We didn't get that far. We've been trying, but it's been a struggle.
Yeah. So whenever you complete the special world, you are teleported back to the beginning of the regular overworld on Yoshi's Island. And everything, instead of being like bright grass green, it all turns kind of an autumn orange color, which is really cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
The Koopas, they turn to these weird like upright Koopas that have Mario masks on them. Like you're gonna have to look this up because it's hard to describe. But they're basically like, they look like big Mario bobbleheads, but their shells are the heads. And like when you jump on them, the little Koopa comes out of its shell, but the shell is like a Mario head. It's really weird.
What? That's amazing.
Yeah, the piranha plants turn into like these jack-o'-lantern looking things, which is weird. The bullet bills turn into these birds, which is actually really funny. Yeah, a bunch of weird little things happen, and it's really interesting and like really goofy. I mean, I can tell from your reaction that you find it funny. Like just wait till you see it or play it.
Yeah, no, for real.
I guess the only thing is I wish that I could kind of toggle it on and off, because once you beat the special world and you get these new visuals, you can't do it. You can't change it back.
Oh, yeah, that kind of sucks.
Which like makes sense, because back in the day, I don't think people were all that worried about, customization for the most part.
Right.
I mean, hell, you couldn't even save the game whenever you wanted. Why would you be able to like revert the visuals?
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of a fun thing that has a tiny, tiny little downside for me of not being able to undo it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with you, but like you said, that day and age, they probably figured, who's going to complain about that?
Yeah. Not some asshole like 20 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, sweet, dude. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, cool. That's it for me. That's a quote from Emperor's New Groove, for those who like that movie. Anyway, I gave, do you want to get in the ratings?
Yeah. I gave visuals a 5 out of 5.
I knew it. Well, actually, okay, historic moment here on the IG podcast. Shit. Yeah, you're not ready for this. So I believe this is my highest rating for visuals in a game on this podcast. I gave it I'm not sure on that. So for our fact checkers out there, you know how we have our good and true fact checkers. I really fumbled that. But
Yeah, you did.
for visuals, I gave it a 97.
Oh,
yeah, dude.
Shit.
That's pretty up there for me. And I thought my reasoning behind that is, okay, like I said earlier, Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, and you got to think, okay, that's your reference for what Mario is at that point in time. Then you get to Super Mario World, you have to think that game looks amazing. So I think a 97 is a very good rating for visuals.
I totally agree.
Sweet. Okay, well, moving on to audio. I will start off on this one. I don't have much to say other than you have your classic catchy Mario tunes that we all know and love. Katie and I found ourselves humming and whistling to this to all these different songs or tunes, I should say, of Mario, and we just get it stuck in our heads all day. So I really enjoyed the tunes in this game, and the nuanced sounds from like the spin jump or just like jumping on things like the
Yeah.
So I mean, just the sounds are great too. I mean, honestly, the aesthetics in this game, I completely was in love with the aesthetics of this game, especially for what it was at the time. They're just outright amazing, man.
Yeah. And we keep saying, for the time, but I think all this stuff holds up really well to this day, and that's why people still play it.
Yeah, even to this day. You're right.
To this very moment. Yeah, the audio is really excellent, I think. The tunes are insanely catchy. My mom actually would start humming them like way back in the day. She would hear my brother and I playing this game for hours, and she would start humming dun, 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 like, so that's a testament to that for sure. If my mom gets into it, then you know that the game's got catchy music.
Yeah, you know it's real.
Sound effects, super fun, super satisfying. I love the little smack sound whenever you spin jump off something. It's like, or it's like, whatever. It's like a slap.
I know what you're talking about. That
really
actually is sick.
I do think the jump sound is kind of annoying, and there's hard evidence of this, which is that while Kevin and Chris were streaming one day, Katie was playing Super Mario World in the background.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, I wonder if Peter can hear the game. And I was like, I can literally hear it every time Katie jumps. But
yeah, that was funny.
Very small complaints, and otherwise amazing sonic landscape, as it were.
Yeah. I think for me, when it comes to video games and audio, songs and tunes are great. But what really like gets my attention personally is like the sound clips of like the actions of what you're doing, like jumping or, and that may suck for you or something like that, or jumping on things or, just the nuanced sounds of the games. I really enjoy those. So I don't know, that resonates with me well. If you have a game that has good sound bites for whenever you do an action, you've got me hooked. I mean, I'm all ready to go. Now, you can't have just silent background, because then it's just kind of like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, it all meshes together. However, that resonates with me the most when it comes to that.
Yeah, sound effects are important, man. People might overlook them or not think about them consciously, but you have a game with sounds that are lackluster, and you're going to notice it.
Yeah. Have you seen, I know you don't have Mario Maker, but you've seen Mario Maker, right?
Yeah.
You know how you can set...
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
When you can like hit something and it goes, oh! That's just hilarious. It's super obnoxious. And, if it was any other normal game, I'd be like, this is awful. But you could set the sound effects to anything that you hit, really, to whatever you want it to be. And people set it to the most ridiculous things in that game. And it's just cracks me up. So
I think in general, Super Mario Maker is a study in excess and the ability of people to have literally no taste. Because Nintendo gave you all the tools and you went and made this abomination with like confetti and children cheering and 20 Bowsers stacked on top of each other, Jenga style. And,
dude, I've always wondered if you had Super Mario Maker and I had Super Mario Maker, what kind of levels you would make and how much fun I would have playing them.
Mine would have like perfectly aligned everything.
Yeah. I wonder what kind of levels I would make. I would kind of go for like some cool stuff, but also out of the ordinary, I would think.
Yeah. Like a level that has one cool gimmick instead of like 30 terrible gimmicks.
Yeah, see, yeah, exactly. I would be like, okay, I'm all about like going outside the box every now and then, but that's just me. Anyway,
I want to go inside the box and talk a little bit more about audio just for a sec.
Okay.
So another Game Boy Advance difference. I know I'm full of them. Actually, Nintendo did this with some other Game Boy Advance games too, like some Zelda ones. But in this game, Mario and Luigi like have little voice clips. For example, whenever you get a power up, they go, "Woohoo! Just what I needed," and they like make little grunts of pain, like "ah, oh," whenever they get hit by stuff.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other little things, and it's kind of annoying that they did that in the Game Boy Advance remake. I don't think it was necessary, but I think they were kind of having fun with like adding little things here and there to their remakes. I think that's kind of what they were, experimenting with, and it turned out really well for the most part. Just some little missteps here and there, maybe, in my personal opinion.
That seems really out of place for that game in particular.
Yeah, because it's like simple in some ways.
You
Like-
wouldn't think that it would come from a Mario that looks like that can't move its mouth, right?
I guess that's true. Yeah.
So like the 3D model ones, it makes sense, but like you're taking the Super Nintendo game where you have the context of we didn't have these kind of audio clips and if we did, it was just really weird. To now you're you're doing that. Okay, well, cool. I guess that's whatever you want to do, man.
Yeah. The very last thing I want to say is that I do wish, in my heart of hearts, that there were just a few more tunes, a few more unique music tracks. I think the music in this game is amazing, and I don't think it. I've never really been bothered by there being a relatively small number of tunes, but like as I'm thinking of stuff to critique it on, I think maybe there could be a few more themes, like for the typical outdoor levels, or maybe like one more cave theme rather than the solitary single cave theme that they have currently. Just a little personal thing.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
But again, not really a problem because the tunes they do have are just so catchy and so good and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I found myself to be pretty satisfied with the tunes that they had in it. However, that being said, I haven't played the whole game, so that might be like it might grow on me to like it might be like, okay, I wish you had more. But I agree. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. I do want to say I love the credits theme. I don't know if you've gotten the credits yet.
No,
but,
I'm not that good, Peter. Come on now. We haven't beaten the game.
Okay. Well, you could have just said that, like, oh, we haven't beaten the game. Boom. Anyway, yeah, credits theme is really good. So if you do beat the game sometime, you can look forward to that.
Yeah.
And that does it for me.
Cool. Well, let's hear your rating, bud.
Well, thought long and hard about this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of jumping between a 4 and a 5, but you know what? I'm gonna give it a 5.
Oh, so far, Super Mario World is the perfect game.
So far, will it continue? Tune in to find out.
Tune into the next segment. Yeah, no, I gave it a 95. I think I think it's pretty good. It might also be, for fact checkers out there, again, you're busy this episode, I know. But I think that might be the highest audio, if not tied for the highest audio. Because I want to say Star Fox was pretty up there as well. But yeah, no.
Cool. Can I move on over to content?
Yeah, give us that segue.
You know I'm all about that content.
I know you are.
Well, I'll start out by saying that I believe this game is a very good length. If you're really good at the game, you can tear through it kind of quickly. There are shortcuts you can do by means of hidden exits and the Star Road and other stuff where you can get to Bowser very quickly and beat the game very quickly. That's like actually its own speedrun category. But in general, there's a lot of levels in the game. There's a lot of game to play.
Yes.
Especially once again, given the time frame or time period. And that that is all that I need to say about the length of the game. It sounds like you kind of agree. Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yes, I actually did some research.
Ooh.
How about that? Do you know exactly how many levels there are in Super Mario World?
I think I know how many exits there are.
Okay.
I believe there are 96 exits.
Yes, that's basically all I was going to say. There's 96 exits.
Hell yeah.
So you got it right on point. So combining normal and secret exits, you get a total of 96 different exits or practically levels, so to speak. So, yeah.
It's probably like 60 levels or something.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
But you get my point. There's 96 different like areas to explore.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. There's definitely enough for you to do in this game.
Not only that, but the bonus areas I think are really strong. You have Star World or Star Road rather, where it's an area kind of in space in the shape of a star, and you can teleport there by unlocking places on the overworld where you can teleport to and fro. The levels there are pretty challenging. They require you to do certain things that maybe you don't usually do in many of the regular levels, so they kind of stretch your brain a little bit. And when you beat the entirety of the Star Road, then you get to the Special World, which has the hardest levels in the game, hands down. They are really challenging. And like Star Road, they do introduce some new and creative ways that you have to use Mario and use items and such. But it's a really, really satisfying reward for the end of the game. You know, you can get to them before you beat Bowser or after you beat Bowser. It's kind of flexible. But in the event that you have beaten Bowser already, you can go to the Star Road and get this new content, and then go to the Special World and get even more content that's like way more challenging than anything else. And I just think that's a huge strength. It ends on a really strong note in that regard. It ends on a strong note with Bowser by himself, but then if you have the wherewithal to go and do the additional worlds, then you get even more content, and it's great.
Right. No, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you could play this game for a very long time and be entertained, and that speaks for itself.
Yeah, and another way that you can do that is that you can impose your own challenges on yourself. Like it's one of those games where you can go out of your way to avoid power-ups if you want to, which is something that I did once on Twitch. You can there are switch palaces that activate certain blocks that help you out. If you want to, you can pass those up, and that doesn't make a huge difference, but it is a little thing where maybe some things will be harder. You know, that's a little challenge you can give yourself.
You can play it differently.
Yeah, you can speed run it if you want to. Like that's another way you can challenge yourself, like with almost any other game. But yeah, I mean, people continue to play this game for a reason, and we've said that several times, but it's just so true.
Yeah, people will be playing this game 1,000 years from now.
You heard it here first.
On the Interstate Gamers podcast. When they archive this podcast, they will know, and they can reference us on whatever social media exists at that time. 1,000 years from now, you can follow us on Twitter at the IG.
Oh wow,
the IG_cast. Oh boy. Anyway, the only thing I really wanted to, you kind of touched on like the different levels and the length of the game. That was one of the things that I wanted to talk about. But another thing is basically something I've kind of already mentioned. Some of the things I've already mentioned. I mentioned there in regard to the gameplay, what they brought to the table, but the mere fact that they brought a lot of characters such as Yoshi and like the football player enemy, or I'm not sure, but is Cape Mario, is that the only one that like exists in this one?
I think it's the only new power up. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. So they brought in Cape Mario and things like that. They brought back the Koopalings from Super Mario Bros. 3. We all love the Koopalings. Who doesn't love the Koopalings? If you don't love the Koopalings, Peter, you know, I completely missed on that. But I'm glad that they did bring them back, because it kind of gives you more importance to each kind of, I want to say segment or world that you're trying to, or level, I should say, that you're trying to accomplish and get past. You're like, oh, I got to fight this Koopaling at the end of this world. Or I'm excited to fight the next Koopaling. Until you finally get to Bowser and you're like, okay, you know, Bowser's the bad Big Bad Koopa at the end, King Koopa. I mean, what more could you want? But, I really like the content that it brought in terms of the players and the innovation to the gameplay that it brought. I think it just added a lot to the game in terms of that.
Yeah. It is a little bit unfortunate that some of the Koopalings are recycled in terms of how you fight them. Like, for example, the first and the last Koopaling, you fight them the same way, and there's like 2 or 3 others that share things like that.
Yeah.
But again, the time it came out, limitations, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the Koopalings have never been complicated. They've never been like hard to beat, if I'm being honest, in any game. But yeah.
One little thing that I want to mention, this is another fun Game Boy Advance segment. So the Game Boy Advance version has a progress tracker screen where if you're on the overworld, you can press select, I think, and it displays all of the levels that you found. It displays whether you've gotten all of the dragon coins, which you might know as Yoshi coins. It keeps track of how many of those you've gotten in each level and like whether you've gotten all the secret exits or not.
Right.
It's really cool. It shows you your total gameplay time. And when you 100% the game, you unlock a feature where you can teleport instantly to any level by pulling up that screen and navigating to the level you want and pressing A. And you just teleport there.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it's something that I totally wasn't expecting. I don't even know how I found it. It doesn't tell you that you gain that ability. It just kind of, there's an arrow that appears on the screen where there wasn't one before, and you can move it up and down to select a different level. And it's like, oh, I couldn't do this before, could I? And I pressed A, and then I teleported. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I didn't know that I unlocked this thing, but I did. And just another fun little quality of life thing that the Game Boy Advance port did.
Yeah, and that's something you have mentioned for other games that you wish it had, such as Star Fox. You have mentioned several times that you wish you had like a kind of, you could go back and replay some of these levels. So
yeah, it's not exactly the same thing. And I don't think I have to explain why, but yeah, like it makes it easier to go back and play the parts of the game that you want to play, for sure.
Right, yeah. Cool.
Well, that does it for me.
Does it for me too.
Pretty short content section, I think, compared to most of them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this game is gameplay, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so content, I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you, man. I gave it a 92.
Well, Kevin, it's funny you say that. Actually, it's not really funny. Makes perfect sense. Totally.
It's funny that it's not funny.
I gave it 5 out of 5.
Oh, shoot. This is 100? This is 100.
It's that young 20. It's that 2020 vision, man.
That 2020 vision.
Yeah.
Dang. That is the first ever perfect score from you.
And I was about to give it a 4 on audio, but the only real complaints I had there was that I wanted a few more tracks. But I thought about it, and I was like, nah, that doesn't really matter, like a whole 20% worth,
Yeah.
Also, kind of a silly reason to say this, but I kind of wanted to give this game a perfect rating. Because I really do feel like that it's that good of a game. I really do.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. Hey, if you feel that way, man, why not? But I'm just throwing this out there. 4.5 still on the table.
No, man. Can't do it. Cannot do it.
Okay. Well, I gave it a 92. So let me we all kind of know what your overall score is by now, but
yeah.
Let's kind of gather mine up here. So I got 90 for gameplay. Aesthetics, if you combine visuals and audio, is a 96, and then content is a 92. This brings my overall score to a 92.67, which means this game rounds up to a 93 for me.
Which means that between both of us, it rounds up to a 96.5, I think, right?
Let's see, 90.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
So for our fact check.
Okay, enough of that.
I'm just kidding. Oh, boy. Yeah, so cool. That's actually, where does that rank? I didn't check.
I think that's probably our number 1.
Oh, we have a new number 1. Is Star Fox dethroned?
I think Star Fox has been usurped.
Oh, dang. Super Mario Bros. World has dethroned Star Fox at the number 1 game. You heard it here first. So we'll have more games to review, and so definitely look out for that. So we'll see if any games can dethrone this game. So you'll have to stay tuned in for that. But I believe now that brings us to our most important part of the podcast, right?
I agree, yeah.
The quick attack section. So, as you guys know, the quick attack section is kind of like a buy or sell. I ask Peter buy or sell questions and or the guests on the show, which we don't have any guests this time. But I asked them questions about gaming news and if they would buy or sell this kind of news.
Basically, you can think of this section, if it helps any, as me being a little baby in my high chair at the table. And Kevin is just spoon feeding me news, little tidbits, little tiny bites of gaming news. And if I like it, I go, yee. And if I dislike it, I spit it out on the floor.
I think that's a very good...
It's actually not a bad analogy.
Oh, please. We need to post like a picture of like your face and like Photoshop like a baby in a high chair. Anyway.
What are the words this time, Kev?
This week is smash or pass.
Fun fact, I once went to a Melee tournament called Smash Till You Pass.
Oh, where was that at?
Just some guy's house here in Denver.
Oh, I didn't know if it was in Denver or AZ.
Yeah, in DNV.
Two very different places, if y'all didn't know.
Yeah. Let's get on to it.
Get on to the quick attack section. Okay, so Fortnite.
Oh, God damn it.
I'm just kidding. I even put that in my notes to even start out with that.
Oh, you fucker. That's a good one.
Peter's tired of my Fortnite news. But anyway, Nintendo announces a new Super Smash Bros. Along with an invitational tournament at the E3 conference this year. Are you smashing or are you passing?
Literally smashing.
Yeah.
Literally.
Okay, so Peter also, on a side note, Peter and I also have a side bet on whether or not this will be a port.
Definitely won't be a port.
The announced invitational tournament basically confirms just about. I mean, we don't know for sure, but in my mind, basically confirms that is most definitely not a port, and I will probably be buying Peter, I think it was dinner.
Of a minimum $10 value, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So next time Peter comes in, I definitely, well, it remains to be seen, but I'm pretty sure I owe him dinner. So thanks, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll give you a whole dinner.
Ooh.
Callbacks.
In related news, and I say related to this podcast, Nintendo officially states that Mario is in fact still a plumber after changing the description on his Nintendo profile page, which stated that he was a plumber long ago, meaning that he is still a plumber. Either that or he has regained his position as a plumber. Are you smashing or are you passing?
I'm smashing, man. I think that being a plumber is an integral part of Mario's identity. We can't let the up-and-coming generations forget his origins, and not just his origins, but where he is right now, because he's obviously still a plumber. So,
right.
Gotta keep it 100 with the fans. So,
right.
Smash for me.
I like that. Okay, cool. Well, going on to our next fact. Ark is coming to the Switch. We all know Ark. Ark is the game. It's the dinosaur survival game where you can just kind of build whatever you want and also tame dinosaurs. And that's coming to the Switch. So are you smashing or are you passing that?
Smashing, dude. I look forward to eventually TM getting a Switch and being able to play Ark, hopefully, because I've seen you play it a long time ago and it looked really fun.
Yeah, and I think you and I being able to play Ark would be pretty dope.
That would be awesome.
So, and really just any Nintendo game together. I think it would be awesome to play video games with you wirelessly over the internet once again.
Yeah.
Okay, so next fact, Bethesda announces a press conference at E3. Are you smashing or you passing? I say press conference. Not all gaming companies do this, and Bethesda doesn't do this every year, although they have been doing it a lot in recent years. their press conference is basically a standalone Bethesda conference instead. Like, like Microsoft does their own press conference. Bethesda will be hosting their own press conference. So, there's likely to be big news at this press conference. So are you smashing or are you passing?
Smashing, I guess. I'm not really invested into Bethesda because I just never really played their games. But I know that a lot of people will be excited. I feel like you probably would be excited too, huh?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I just hope it's something to get us excited about. And, and I guess I'm putting my own takes on this, but it seems like last press conference, there wasn't much to say, I guess, other than they were putting some things on the Switch like Skyrim. I would be hyped for Fallout 4 on Skyrim. That would be amazing. Oh, wait. On Skyrim.
That would be amazing, actually.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But Fallout 4 on the Switch would also be amazing. So and that's like something I want at the very least. Don't know if it's going to happen, but that is something I want to happen out of it. Now, if they're going to announce a new Elder Scrolls also, I'm game for that as well. So, yeah. So our last fact, and I think our most interesting one, is going to throw you for a loop. So here we go. According to the original developers, Sonic the Hedgehog was intended to be a World War II fighter pilot, and the developers showed the original documents to prove it at the 2018 Game Developer Conference. Sonic, or they actually called him the Human Hedgehog, and his nickname, it was actually human. His nickname was Hedgehog, and he was obsessed with flying his plane at unknown speeds, and he had like a pilot's jacket, and his hair stood straight up, which is why they call him Hedgehog. So are you kind of smashing, or are you passing like this little tidbit of information that you now know about the origins of Sonic?
I might have to get back to you next time we record, because it's probably going to take me that long to process this information.
Isn't that crazy?
Sonic the Hedgehog was originally a human World War II fighter pilot nicknamed the Human Hedgehog because of his hair.
Right.
All right. That's not batshit insane at all.
And then think of what he's become now. Isn't that crazy?
Actually, I was thinking about this as you were saying that fact. I wonder if the kind of pilot aspects of the Human Hedgehog kind of became Tails a little bit, because Tails is very much like the tinkerer and the mechanic and builds things. And I know that flying something isn't the same as building it, but right. I wonder if that's maybe related.
In the article, they made sure to mention that it was not clear of the inspirations behind Tails and Knuckles and some of the other characters, but you can kind of obviously see a little bit of that in Tails, as he has, I think, those goggles. Does he have goggles?
Sometimes, I think. I'm not really sure. I'm not a big Sonic person.
Right. But he flies with his tail. So, I want to say there's some inspiration with Tails in there. But
man, that's nuts.
I know. I read that. I was like, no. Cool. Well, so are you just going to get back to us on the next episode or what?
Yeah, I think I need some time to ruminate. So I'll do that. Okay. Ruminate, contemplate, constipate.
All right. So literally the very next word you hear on the next podcast will be Peter's answer. It'll be smash or pass. And that's it. It opens up the next episode.
It's like smash. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. All right, we're doing that now.
All right.
I need to write down a note to remind me.
Yeah, I'll make sure to remind you.
All right.
So that does do it for our quick attack section. I thought that was a very cool quick attack section.
Yeah.
This week.
It's full of a lot of good news and one very bizarro piece of news. So.
Yeah. Who knew, Sonic? Who knew?
No Fortnite, praise the Lord.
I actually could have done Fortnite news because there actually was a very interesting development. And you don't have to do this, but it came to mobile, so I guess as everybody. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. But I wasn't going to do that to you, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do the closing out stuff. Guys, if you are a fan of the show, or even if you're not a fan, go ahead and follow us. If you're not a fan, please go and follow us on social media. We are at Twitter, at the IG_cast. Where we have a Facebook page at the Interstate Gamers. Just search it. We'll be there. Although I think Kevin's most active on Twitter, so if you want the most fun little updates, then definitely follow us there. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Google Play. We are on Spotify. We are, that's it actually, I think. Our cool website that Kevin threw together with help from Simplecast, our host, is at theinterstategamers.review. Very cool domain. Go ahead and go there if you want to see where you can find us. That's kind of the hub, I would say. Like, if you go to theinterstategamers.review, that would be the best or the easiest jumping off point for anything else you might want to catch us on. So definitely go ahead, check us out there, and follow us elsewhere as you see fit. As usual, I want to plug the Yeasty Boys. They're a great podcast. We love them. They love us. It's a very nice relationship we have. I want to plug For Pod's Sake, another group of three fellows who talk about cool things, fun group to hang out with in the podcast sort of sense. I also want to tell the listeners about a different podcast this time, if I may, very quickly.
Yeah.
So this is a podcast that is much more popular than any of the other ones, including our own. So they don't really need the boost, but I just want to tell people about it because I like it. It's a podcast called Still Buffering. The title doesn't really have anything to do with the content, so I'm sorry. But in Still Buffering, there are three girls, three women, I guess. Two of them are in their 30s. And the third one is a teenager, like probably just about graduating high school by this point. They're all sisters.
Oh.
So there's a pretty big age gap there. And they talk about the different ways that culture and school and everything has changed in the time that the older two sisters grew up and the time that the youngest sisters are growing up now. It's really interesting, especially for me since I'm male and they're female, so I get to hear about the female perspective. But also because I sort of grew up, as did you, in between those two generations. Because, like, you know, we're not in our 30s, we're not in our teens, we're in our 20s. And it's kind of fun seeing, like, who I identify with the most at any given point. Usually I find myself understanding more of the older siblings' viewpoint. So I guess maybe things have just changed a lot between then and now. But yeah, Still Buffering. It's a great time. They talk about some cool things. You might get a little nostalgic for the middle school or high school days, or maybe not, depending on your experience and how old you are now. But yeah, really fun, heartwarming podcast. They're a good bunch.
That's cool. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I'll have to check that out myself. One thing I do want to kind of backtrack a little bit. You can also find out our individual ratings for each game, which I feel like is pretty important for this podcast.
Oh, yeah, actually, good point.
So tinyurl.com /
IG ratings.
IG ratings. Okay. I didn't know if there was a "the" in there because I know you don't like the "the."
It's grown on me.
It's grown on you? Okay, good. Because it's kind of really grown on me. But we are the Interstate Gamers. You can find us. We're super accessible, as Peter's already mentioned. So you can find us everywhere. But we definitely enjoy bringing this episode to you guys, and can't wait to bring you another one in the next 2 weeks.
Yep, if all goes well.
If all goes well.
All right, well, yeah. Thanks again, guys, for listening. And until next time.
Wait. Oh, wait, I've already done that one.
Oh, well.
Yeah, baby.
We've already done that one, too, probably like 3 times.
Body armor. I'm running out of Streets 112 quotes. All right, guys.
Go listen to Streets 112, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
Peace.